Hello everyone, my name is Grant Hague, and I'm a GIS technician with Provo City. Welcome to UGIC 2020, a virtual version. I'm a little sad that we can't meet in person this time. It would be my second UGIC conference. My first time, I actually met the people who would become my peers and co-workers shortly afterwards. Networking works. Do it. Today, I'd like to talk to you about digital data requests and fulfilling them. I'd also like to talk about what Provo used to do with them, what they're like now, and what we would like to do with future data requests, how we can improve them. Let's jump right in. A digital data request is a request for utility information. Here in Public Works, we give sewer, water, and storm. Our past process, we used to give requesters what we called map books. A map book was a PDF of the requested area based off of the Provo City grid. Each section of the grid displayed water, sewer, and storm assets. Here is an example of one. Here's our vicinity map showing where the section is. Here's our index showing each of the assets along with a label. Here are the assets themselves, all displayed. Here's our disclaimer, because every city needs that. And then here's our date. It's a little inaccurate. It hasn't been updated in 18 months. Not bad, right? I think it is. This was the problem with map books. We just couldn't keep them all updated often enough to have the data be accurate. Can you imagine giving this to a contractor? There's too much liability here. Assets move and change all the time in a city. Projects happen everywhere. And if we were to give this to a contractor or a developer who wanted to change a pipe, but it had been moved, say 6 months previous, then this sort of data wouldn't work. The contractor wouldn't be able to find the pipe or hit something else and have to pay for the damages. So, we decided to go with something new. Let's start with an email to show how the process begins. Here we have a contractor working with CenturyLink who wants to know where the water, sewer, and storm drains are at the intersection of 800 North, 500 West. He wants a DWG and a PDF of the area. He has also helpfully attached an image of the area where he wants the assets. This is great. This shows a pretty precise area of where the requester wants his data. It's a little harder to go off of a verbal description, a written description, off of an email sometimes. So this is a much better thing to have. Now, we'll create a folder for it. This is our DDRs area, our digital data requests. We'll go with our year first, our month, and the day, the company the requester works for, or if we are working with a resident of the city, we just say Provo resident, we do last name first, and then the area that they want. And we'll jump into the file. Now we'll go to an application some of you may be familiar with. This is GIS Home, a place to store and show GIS data online. Here's the intersection that we need, 800 north, and although it's not showing, this is 500 west. We'll start by turning on our layers. Everything's popping up, so the internet's agreeing with us today. And we'll set up our print to PDF. Slap in our name. We'll choose 11 by 17 landscape because we'll have a little index to fit on the PDF when it pops up, and we'll hit print. While that's going, I'm going to jump into ArcMap and start the process of getting a DWG file. First, I'm going to start with my digital data request areas, which are these green polygons you can see already. I'm going to start an editing session and then begin drawing my polygon. We'll make a rectangle. Rectangles are solid shapes. Okay, we've got that finished. Now we'll fill out the attributes. We'll fill in our date. And because we are amazing and fast, we are delivering our data on the same day as we got the request. We have John Doe as our requester, and he works for CenturyLink. We'll put in our project name. And we need our project path, which is the place where our data request is. Alright. Now, for record keeping purposes, I'm going to create a layer from these selected features and give them a separate name than the object ID given by the digital data request layer when it made that polygon. Okay, next we're going to extract some data so that we can turn it into a DWG file. This is under the toolboxes and system toolboxes, server tools, and data extraction. And we're using ArcMap. As you can see, we have a few different assets that we can put in, but to save time, I'm just going to put in a few of them, such as the water main line, the valves, some manholes for the sewer, and the mains, and then the storm as well, with some mains and manholes. For our area of interest, we want our polygon. For our feature format, they want the AutoCAD file. So here is our standard DWG AutoCAD file. Then we'll choose the Joint Photographics Expert Group's JPEG 2000, JP2 for short. Now we'll go to where we're sending our file, which is going to be our DDR file. We'll come down to the file that we made here for Mr. John Doe. And we're going to call this file our project output zip, because sometimes these files can be very large. Depending on the size of the area, both the assets and the photo, the image in the background, can be quite large. Usually the photo is a lot bigger on data size than the assets. While we're waiting for that, let's go back to GIS Home. We're going to check our PDF file. Awesome. We have a pretty good area to give Mr. Doe. And as you can see, we have our index. So let's download that to our requester file. We'll again give it our area name. And now, ArcMap should be done. Oh, it's going to give us a problem or two. Perfect. It didn't. So, let's check our file one more time. And hey presto, we have our zip file. Let's open it. And open it again. And we are going to check our file. And after a few moments, we want it read only because we don't need to change anything here. We'll continue through that. And here we have our DWG file of the area. Let's look into one real quick just to be sure. Here we have a sewer gravity main and a few details about its location. These are just generic. Now we're done. Don't need to save any changes there. Oops, looks like we put our PDF in the wrong file. So I'll go back and correct that. We want this one. Put in our area again. There we go. That looks good. Now, let's head back to our email and send John Doe his stuff. This is the first time I've ever written a Dear John letter. Alright, we have our disclaimer that we need to put in. Because again, every city needs a disclaimer. Our disclaimer talks about all of the standards, specifically that none have been applied to the DWG file. No symbology has been applied to the DWG file. It's just a bunch of random colors and symbols. We do ask that the people we send our data to give us feedback, whether they liked it or whether they absolutely hated it. And then what kind of format they like their data in when we send it to them. At the very end, I always ask the requesters to let me know if they need more data than we have given them. And we finish off our letter with good English. I swear I have it. And then we come over to our attached files and we give both the PDF and the project output file. Lastly, I attach my supervisor, Calvin Home, to keep him in the loop of what data is going out. Now we send. Perfect. Now, let's talk about what Provo is doing to help requesters with this. So, our previous method used only a PDF. Now we have the deliverable in a few different formats: PDF, shapefile, AutoCAD formats, a file geodatabase, and a MicroStation format. These different deliverables help those have the necessary information, especially developers and engineering firms, to develop a property, helping them have an awareness of existing utilities. This is important for a couple of reasons, but the biggest one is that it reduces risk of damaging city-owned assets. If a contractor knows where they are, they're far less likely to hit them. This doesn't mean that they won't still hit them, but that they have a much better awareness of where those assets are so they don't hit them. Next, how this process helps us. Similar to the contractors and developers, this reduces liability for the city and keeps assets from being damaged. It also helps us keep track of who is doing the requesting and what the intent of their request is, because there is some data that we can't always give out. Finally, we want to make some enhancements to this process in the future. We would love to have a contactless method of providing data to requesters. One way we want to do this is to have a web form or a portal for requesters to submit requests. We are working on acquiring our own server and geodatabase for this process for ease of data access. We would also like in the future to have a requirement that developers, contractors, and engineering firms provide approved plans to Public Works prior to the construction. The plans will be georeferenced and digitized and then drawn in prior to the construction of new assets. Once the assets are going in, our improvement inspectors can check what's going in the ground against the plans to ensure contractor honesty and to be aware of any changes that the contractor would like to make. Lastly, thank you all for coming. I appreciate this chance to present at UGIC, and I hope that you all have found this insightful. Please feel free to contact me if you have any questions. Thank you, and have a wonderful day with the rest of UGIC.